Hey, cheers. Well, welcome Aaron Hammer to the Winning Momentum Podcast with your host. That's me, Scott Sinclair. Good to see you here. Got to be into the mic if you can.
Like this? How's that?
That's good. How's Fernie treating you?
Fernie, my new favorite place.
Oh, yeah?
Mountain town, that is.
This is my hometown of Fernie, British Columbia, and let this be a lesson to all of you future podcast guests. If you come here in person, like Aaron Hammer did, you get a free use of a condo. The condo's good.
Beautiful.
You're right on the ski hill, and there's 3 or 4 decent restaurants.
Rockstar living.
Yeah.
In Fernie, BC.
Keep that as close as you can, if you don't mind.
There we go. How about that? Hot mic?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Let's get at this thing. I'm going to do an introduction first. Aaron Hammer has joined us. Here's what happened. I was following him on his Instagram, and you're skiing in Aspen, different places, Vail, Utah, Whistler. And I said, man, you ski a lot for a guy from Miami. And turns out you're in between homes. And so we got you up here to do some more skiing.
That's right.
To hang
Been
out
here
with
over
me.
a week now.
Love it. Okay, Aaron. Aaron is an award-winning, nationally recognized corporate restructuring attorney who chairs the Bankruptcy and Reorganization Creditors Rights Practice Group at HMB Legal Counsel, strictly out of Chicago, or other offices?
No, one office.
One office.
National presence.
National presence, headquartered out of Chicago. He's also a successful entrepreneur and investor, recognized civic leader, and frequent author and speaker on cutting-edge legal and business issues. I've actually spoken with Aaron many times, so I'm aware of that. Aaron devotes his law practice to solving his clients' most challenging insolvency and creditors' rights issues by emphasizing a practical, business-oriented, relationship-based approach in both distressed transaction and related litigation. For nearly 25 years, Aaron has led major engagements on behalf of corporate borrowers, lenders, and financiers, and most notably bankruptcy committees in hundreds of significant bankruptcies and workouts across the country, that country being the U.S. We have a global audience. I was getting text messages from France this morning on David Cohen's interview. I thought that was kind of cool. And in many foreign countries prior to, we can skip the prior to HMB. Twice he has led his firms to receiving the Turnaround Management Association prestigious Large Transaction of the Year award. 2014 was awarded, his award was granted for his work on behalf of Official Equity Committee of Ag Feed Industries, USA. 2009 award for representation of the Creditors Committee Intrinsic. Did I say that properly?
Intrinsic, that's right.
Yep. 2020, Aaron and his team received the Association's Small Business Award for his representation of Red South Beach, which I think we'll talk about a lot today, correct?
I hope so, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Aaron has served as principal partner investor in special situations, healthy transactions, focus on hospitality, professional services, real estate. Is an owner and investor in everything from casual to Michelin star restaurants. This is one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the show. Is you've been you are a professional, not that you have been a professional. You are a professional. You're a lawyer. You've been ultra successful in that part of your career. Yet you've made a transition to entrepreneurship, and so you have a foot in both. And
I know someone else like that.
Yeah, and the entrepreneurship, is that relatively new? Like, what would you say, 5-7 years, something
7
like
years,
that? So the pains of that are fresh, right? You can talk about them and the learning experiences, which I thought would be great for the audience, for the listeners here. You're perhaps with notably, what does that say? Most notably, Aaron is the managing partner of Red South Beach, which is constantly recognized among the top steakhouses in America. I've been there. I can validate it's fantastic. If you're in Miami, go to Red and ask for Aaron. Aaron is a member of the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, Chicagoland chapter, serves on regional boards, an active participant in the Anti-Defamation League, serving on its board of directors. 2015, president of the TMA, Turnaround Management Association in Chicago in the Midwest chapter. For almost a decade, has taught complex bankruptcy transactions as an adjunct professor at Northwestern Law School. This is making me tired,
I
Aaron.
feel old.
He has lectured extensively
seriously.
on current, domestic, and cross-border insolvencies. When they say cross-border in our business, they mean Canada and the U.S. exclusively, right?
True.
Okay. Done that lecturing at the University of Chicago and the Canadian Institute, and has published countless topical articles, including contributions to several leading treatises. All right. Nowhere in here does it say anything about strings. Do we want to add that onto the list?
Entrepreneur. We can.
So on the entrepreneurial, so you're a partner at the law firm. On the entrepreneurial side, you're a managing partner, managing director of Red, the steakhouse.
That's true.
You have an interest in, I'm not sure what that is, in a few restaurants in Chicago.
True.
There is a retail store, a swimwear store in Miami. Is that correct?
Strings, Miami Beach.
By the name of Strings Miami Beach. Is that everything? Have I captured everything?
Calais Piedra, my project in Marbella, where we're buying 15 luxury villas for rent.
Is that that's in Spain, right?
That's in Spain, Marbella.
When did you start that? That was a year ago?
About a year and a half ago, and we're getting close to closing on the first few villas.
Good for you. Good for you. Why don't we start off? I just want to talk about ask you about your personal journey from professional to entrepreneur. How did you first get the bug? What were you thinking?
That's easy. I had the bug because my dad was an entrepreneur, and I grew up in a family business that I got to be part of many aspects of it. And I met some really good people. My bar mitzvah was even held at my dad's warehouse, the party. And there were a lot of good times there. So I knew what it was like to be an entrepreneur because I witnessed it. I was an only child, and I lost my mom when I was young. And my dad sort of showed me the way in many respects, but I knew what entrepreneurship was. It was in stark contrast to sort of how they inculcate you in law as a young man. There are law firms, just like there are professional services firms that aren't entrepreneurial.
Right. And some that are.
More back when I was younger.
Yep.
More back when I was getting started. There were, white shoe law firms that they didn't really want you to be an entrepreneur. And I learned that not the hard way, but the fair way, I think. Having spent almost 10 years at Mayor Brown and really learning how to be a lawyer. That was in stark contrast to sort of the entrepreneurial spirit that I had when, that I thought I had with my dad. But it's hard because there's golden handcuffs. I tried to be an entrepreneur in my legal practice and building it and rebuilding it and rebuilding it again, as is necessary. And there were entrepreneurial moments in that too. The approaches that we
the golden handcuffs being the equity piece and the threat of that.
Yeah, I've been an equity partner in 3 or 4 law firms now. Doesn't really mean that much. Maybe in a lawsuit, but really you're looking to get as much cash out of the enterprise as you possibly can on any given year. And you can't sell it.
Right. And that's the handcuff. Is there's no exit unless they want
We
it.
had good cash flow
Yeah.
as young professionals. No doubt there. We had good cash flow. When I started in 97, maybe it was, I made $73,000 at Mayor Brown. By 99, I was making like 140 because of the dot-com, the Wilson Sonsini's of the world. They significantly adjusted compensation for young lawyers. And to some extent it's happening today too because, the economy's super, super hot and people are in demand and, It's inflationary.
Yeah.
It just diverged
So
there.
different of our age and our country and our accountants versus lawyers. I started at 15.5. That was my
Wow.
first salary.
That's crazy.
A long time ago, man.
You're not that much older than me.
Yeah, a decade.
Just accountants are underpaid is what I was noting. But they can sell their practice and then resell it and resell it and resell it and resell it.
Make some money on the equity of it. So back to the jumping into entrepreneur. What was your first entrepreneurial venture, and what were the stresses? Was it Red? I don't know if you consider the Chicago
No, I mean,
ones an entrepreneurial
when-
venture as opposed to an investment.
It's got to be Sugar, Felsenthal, Grayson Hammer, right? When I joined the firm that made me a named partner and really gave me a lot of responsibility to run a law firm, to build and run a law firm. So that was entrepreneurship, right? We had to design systems. We had to hire people. We took risks. We needed revenue. There were high expectations, and we met them, and we had fun doing it.
And when did you, or how did you get into Red?
Well, I got into Red because it was 2.5 blocks from my former home in Miami Beach, and we would go to Red, and we'd have a great steak. And it was from the Midwest. It was from Cleveland, and I'm from Chicago coming in, and the staff would welcome us, and it became like a family. And it was a family to a lot of other people too. And Chef came to me maybe in 2018 in August and said, the wheels are coming off the bus of Red Restaurant Group. Can you help me save the restaurant? And I said, absolutely.
So it was part of a larger group.
It was.
Were they all separate companies, or?
They were all separate companies.
And Chef was already a stakeholder in the first company, or?
There was a group.
Yeah.
And the group had different percentage. You had ownership in the group, and then you had ownership in the individual restaurants.
Yeah.
Based on how much you invested over time and yada yada. And then there was a senior secured facility over all entities that was owed like $3-4 million.
Okay.
And
So you started acting for the group?
for Peter, as a shareholder and creditor.
Okay. So you picked one shareholder, Chef, one stakeholder out of this corporate group, and you started acting for him.
That's right.
So at the end of the day, it was a buyout of an estate.
It was a distressed asset
Yeah.
that the lender was potentially going to abandon. I mean, a lot of the value, it was unclear whether they could stay in that location. They had been foreclosed upon by the lender. Chef had cut a new deal with the lender to stay in the space. And that was sort of a deal with the devil, because we knew at the time that it wasn't going to be a long-term solution. There was just too much, there could never be water under the bridge, because the old restaurant group had a lot of conflict with the old landlord. But we used the old landlord to, in a cooperative way, exercise their senior secured rights under Florida law as a landlord. Lien on, furniture, fixtures, equipment. And they foreclosed out all the senior debt based on their lien, and we took the assets unabated.
Right. Okay. And so at what point did you switch from representing to becoming an entrepreneur in this?
Good question.
Finally, I got a good question.
No, come on. They're all good questions. So when did that happen? Well, it happened when the client representation ended. And we had saved Red, and Red was to be Peter's company. That was his quid pro quo for going along with the bankruptcy, the liquidation of the other stores. And the other stores, the principals had PG'd the hell out of everything. And
Personal guaranteed.
personal guarantees. And so my parting gift to them, in exchange for the cooperation that we got to ensure Red South Beach's long-term survivability, that was just sort of how we had to do it. And in hindsight, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the other partners not related
Oh,
to
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
location,
I
had
got
personal
you.
guarantees, and you made some sort of deal with them, I'm certain.
Yeah, well, the deal was that I would negotiate releases of their personal guarantees.
Were you able to do that?
I was, for a fraction cents on the dollar, but I was doing it for Chef anyway, so I could
Right.
do it for all of them.
Right.
And in exchange,
I bought a business that I own right now that way. The vending shareholders, the receiver was driving up the highway, and at the end of the day, what the shareholders really wanted was off of their personal guarantees, and so I bought the bank. I bought the first at a discount, and therefore I owned the personal guarantees. And my deal with them was I would then release the personal guarantees for all the shares for free. And yeah, we got that done. And then in hindsight, one of them was really pissed off with me because they didn't think about getting the discount from the bank, or maybe they thought about it. In fairness, they're good people. But maybe the bank wouldn't deal with them, whereas they would deal with me, because you know how it is. Sometimes bank want to deal, they're pissed off at this group, and
you never know.
you never know. Yeah.
It can be right or wrong.
Yeah.
But that's the situation just sort of in the commercial economy. Sometimes you get what you get.
So you, after the restructuring was done, does that include after the lease was transferred?
So after the restructuring was done, yeah, the way we handled it was I would be Peter's partner
Okay.
once the company was saved.
Right. So to me, this is the law firm was your sweet spot and the restaurant wasn't necessarily. So
No.
a greater degree of risk.
It was a learning opportunity, but I didn't have to risk much. I used my sweat equity
Yeah.
and experience and knowledge to,
So that was part of your decision making
yeah,
to jump into this. Did you have to raise money from third parties?
no.
Okay.
We bootstrapped the whole thing, including the move.
Okay. So what do you find different about being an entrepreneur in that industry and being a professional,
Ooh.
having a job? I know that when you're a partner and when you started Sugar Hammer, whatever the name of that firm was, you considered that that was your name in college, right? Sugar Hammer. That was,
That was funny, man. I like everything about that.
when you, I know you consider that entrepreneurial, and it was for you. But when you're in a larger law firm, a partner, at the end of the day, it's very much like a job. There's somewhere that you can amortize your risk over a bunch of partners. What do you feel differently about the risk and the stresses of being an entrepreneur at Red?
Well, I've seen, since I've been part of YPO, I've seen people really build good companies, and I thought I could do that.
Yeah.
That I had all the skill set, I had the legal background, I understood finance, and hospitality was something that I always enjoyed. So that brought me to the table, and I had some success as a limited partner in some really awesome places in Chicago, and I just
Tell the audience here the name of those places in Chicago, to the extent that you're still involved.
Sure, yeah, for sure. I'm a proud partner of Smith and the Loyalist. Smith is a 2 Michelin star. I guess the guide comes out today in Chicago. No, April 5th. So we got to wait until April 5th to see if Smith gets a 3rd star. but I'm sure John's happy with too. And there's a culture that he's created. So
I get that
place.
big banging through.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you for that. Playing with the Roadcaster, folks. So Smith and Loyalist.
And the Loyalist is Bon Appetit's top cheeseburger in America.
And I've eaten at both, I believe, and fantastic. A while ago now, maybe 3 years ago, pre the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. What have you learned about on Reds right now? I'm not asking so much about Reds, but just you personally. And I'm actually going to tell you why I'm asking that. It's because the Winning Momentum podcast, the whole driver of this and the evolution from what used to be the Martinis with Scott, which was just me figuring out podcasting and YouTubing and trying to provide some value and having some friends on the show. But I'm very concerned if you're into social media, Instagram and Facebook and all of the platforms, a lot of the drivers that get all the followers are coaches. You've probably seen that. And a lot of the coaches are just pushing 20, 25-year-olds into entrepreneurship. Be an entrepreneur, invest in real estate, start a business, be a drop shipper, whatever the hell it is. And what no one ever tells these kids is that, first of all, it's okay to be number two. You don't have to be number one and take that risk. It's not for everybody. But secondly, the stats are that 90% of new businesses never, ever, ever, ever pay their founder a living wage. Ever. And of the 10% that do, about 2%, not 2% of the 10, but 2% of the total, 2% of business actually create some wealth for the founder, as opposed to running a roofing business and you lived a good lifestyle because you were a success and a good business person and you got a paycheck out, but you can't really sell it after you're tied up with personal goodwill. The brand is tied to you personally, right? And so they don't exit. They don't create wealth for the family, which you have seen at the YPO. And so, and that you're trying to replicate. And so the stats are horrific. And that's just the math of it. It's not a comment on any individual entrepreneur or want to be entrepreneur. Those are just the stats. So part of what I'm trying to do is to provide some content that might be able to help, right? And it falls into three categories in my mind. One is your personal habits, because you know this from your entrepreneurial experiences, is that the success of your business is tied to you, maybe to you and chef and that combination, right? But if you have confirmation bias, if you're fearing failure, if you're in a depressive state at that particular point, your business is going to suffer. You can't separate that out. So that's number one. And number two is leadership, because as you well know, in a turnaround, when you're dealing with a distressed asset, often it's about culture. It's not just financial re-engineering, and you have to be able to lead. So the second set is leadership, and the third is technical. How do you not run out of money? Manage a cash flow, negotiate, restructure, right? So those would be the three legs to the stool. And so that's the context. And so what I want to know from you is, what have you learned about yourself through this process with Red? Because I think every professional, not just a lawyer, but an accountant as well, you walk into that, you say, I've seen 1,000 of these, I'm good, right?
No, I mean, Red was a labor of love. It was a beautiful place, and it had a beautiful team, and it had chef, and I just had the right set of skills for that particular job. But to make Red a success, I had to lead. And that was making the call to move locations in the middle of the pandemic. Turned out 100% the right move. If by luck, timing was great. We got a great lease, 20 years, beautiful space, horrible 18 months that followed trying to get the restaurant reopened. But the team really just dug in, and I learned a lot about people, right, in the business. It was a lot different than a law firm. A lot more challenging in certain ways, but a lot more rewarding as well. to actually see something built and have people partake in it, and help lead it, and take on projects and get things done and fight the good fight. We still don't have valet parking. I mean, it's obscene. Give us valet parking.
Wait a minute. I left my car right outside there.
The last tenant, our clients with the Lamborghinis and the Rolls Royces, they want to come with their cars to Red, and as well they should, right? But like the fact that the old restaurant had the exact same parking setup that we're asking for somehow takes 5 months to figure out. So we haven't had valet parking, so that's been a challenge. So it's been a labor of love. It hasn't been, a huge success. Success was we saved the business. We successfully navigated COVID. We relocated to a class above where we were. We retained all of our key employees. We paid those key employees through the pandemic, and they supported us through the process. And then when we could start to work, we bootstrapped the renovation. And what you saw in Miami Beach in December was the restaurant. We still had the covers on the window up.
You did, yeah.
But that was the biggest change. And then you could see, bang, beautiful restaurant there.
I'm going to come back to this defining success, but just before we let that last point go, we should have Svetlana bring us the wine bottle. I don't know.
Can't trust these Russians.
Yeah. I hadn't hit the mute button on time there. We're going to take a little commercial break while we grab the bottle of wine here. If I had my ladder mount, I would show you. Go to roofersworld.com. Actually, here's a better thing. Go to the Scott Sinclair, TheScottSinclair, thescottsinclair.com. It's my new personal branded website. On there, you will find all of my content. Thank you, sir. You'll find all of my content. There'll be blog posts. There's these shows will be posted up there. And also, you can go to everywhere a podcast plays, and please subscribe, or on YouTube, the Winning Momentum Podcast. Please subscribe. And I now have more wine, and I feel better already. Thank you for that.
You are welcome.
Back in the old days with Martinis with Scott, we had a martini maker. And that worked pretty well. Now I'm just stuck on my own, figuring this stuff out. So before we leave this, what have you learned about yourself? What was, again, not for the business, but for Aaron Hammer, what shocked you? What did you need to be better at? And you did mention you learned a lot about people, which maybe that's the answer. Maybe when you started on this, you were not handling the people the way that you needed to evolve. I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Listen, I have a great team. That wasn't the issue. I didn't fully appreciate the scope of dealing with the city of Miami Beach and the county of Miami-Dade, and just how fractured and slow and challenging in so many ways. I mean, the good news is we were able to open 6 months after we moved, but it was only a soft open where we operated the patio. But now, the restaurant is 250 seats easy inside and out.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the last of my thoughts on you personally, evolving into this role. You've got your law practice, which is national, but it's headed out of Chicago. You've got the two businesses in Miami. You've got a development venture going on in Spain. You have family obligations in different places that you're traveling around to. It sounds a lot like my life. And people will ask me, well, how do you juggle all that? How do you run all these things? What is your trick to that?
You're looking at it, just being available all the time and being present as I can be. dealing with changing circumstances, dealing with whatever needs sort of come my way.
Yep.
I've got a good position where I can really drive bankruptcy cases, and I still do. I practice law, I think, pretty effectively still, and there's not a lot of volume of bankruptcy cases. So we're skilled in foreclosure and ABCs and all that stuff, but there's just not a lot of insolvency right now. So, what do? You look for other opportunities. HMB is legal counsel to Strings Miami Beach. They're legal counsel to Calais Piedra, my Marbella project. And, just find ways to sort of cross-pollinate, create economy, and solve problems as they come across my desk.
How many employees at Red?
60.
60. Okay. How many report to you?
All of them.
All of them?
Well, not Peter.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
We have great managers, though. Nicole is our general manager. She's the heart and soul of the front of the house. And, Chef is certainly the heart and the soul of the back of the house. And I'm a guy that's actually driving business to the restaurant.
All the time.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we've talked a lot about Red, but I haven't asked you yet what Red is, apart from a steakhouse. Maybe give your concept for the listeners and how they might find this place when they're in Miami. Okay.
So Red, the name came from the color of women's lipstick, like a bright red lipstick. And the brand has stuck. People enjoy it. People know the food is really good. Be surprised how many people come up to me and say, "You're involved with Red, man, is it good?" And that's a really, really cool thing.
Yeah.
To get that kind of feedback, and knowing that I'm just a part of it, but I push hard and I can get things done, and I think the team recognizes that. When they need me, I'm there for them. When I need them, they're there for me. Now, can we grow a hospitality company from where we are that, is strong and has the right human resources? That's definitely on the table and worthy of discussion.
How do people find Red in Miami?
Red Steak, Google it.
Yep.
Or go to South Point in Miami Beach, the corner of Alton and South Point Drive. It's right on Government Cut. You can see the cruise ships come in and out from the private dining rooms that we have.
And I can confirm it's great food, and you can smoke a cigar on the patio, which works well for me.
We have a beautiful humidor.
Yeah, you do.
Actually, all
you
Gurkhas.
do, yeah. And you make a decent martini.
Thank you.
You pour vodka into a glass well.
It's a Midwest steakhouse, so it's appropriate for another Midwesterner to be part of it.
All right, I have 3 questions submitted by my prior guest, David Cohen.
Oh dear.
And I have that's not true. There was 6 or 7 questions, but I have edited it down to the 3 that I'm comfortable to ask. What would you do differently in hindsight? This is related to the Red turnaround.
Oh, in relation to the Red turnaround, I would have changed sort of the general contractor, project manager team right from the start.
You let it slide. Something was bothering you. And
they just weren't getting the job done. But it was COVID, so we cut them a lot of slack. Right, and then that's.
And you had an interior designer issue drama as well, right?
Chef never liked them, yeah. But they came up with some good ideas.
Right.
And from that, we put other good ideas to it, and it was sort of a labor of love. But it's a beautiful restaurant.
So the learnable lesson that you would have done differently is maybe been, when something's not working.
More
you would
proactive
pull the plug right away.
Transition, yeah.
It's like me with employees and even in my client base when I, do you terminate the contract of that salesperson or this person who you view to be key? And never once in my life have I ever terminated somebody and thought to myself after the fact, I wish I hadn't have done that. It's always, I should have done that 6 months ago. Similar
Yeah.
situation. All right, Mr. Cohen's second question here. What issue kicked your ass? Again, with respect to the turnaround of Reds, and you are still struggling with it. Maybe that's the governmental regulation
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, the swimwear company has been a totally different journey. Getting the permits for that has been crisp and clean, and I have two beautiful women running that process for us, liaisoning with the city.
Coincidence?
You know, at first I wasn't sure what they could do.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, they make friends with everyone, and the permits start coming. Now, for Red, it was different because we had to do some sort of major construction. We had to upgrade the grease trap, and it's been a nemesis chasing me, the grease trap, which we had an issue at the old location, too. But yeah, it was just countless, endless, and we could have used better expediters,
Yeah.
right? I'm not sure the political influence would have even done it. The branches don't talk to each other.
Right.
So, you know, you have to plead with someone to get things done. And
So you don't have a lessons out of that, like, I could have done this differently. It's just been a pain in the
Yeah.
ass. And it's spread throughout your organization. I bet I mentioned that impacts cash flow and opening dates and
attitudes, right? Moods.
yeah.
Because, you know, the staff is working in a space that's not ideal,
Yeah.
and not up to the level of the service that's being provided and the quality of the food that's being served. Atmosphere is a huge part. What Red had was this loyal customer base, and people loved Red just like we loved Red.
Yeah.
And so they supported us, and that was really, really cool. And now to see the vision and, you know, Danny Mazzoni's art right in the center of the restaurant when you walk in, it's just rock star. And it's Miami Beach, and it's a place to have a good time. Get together, have a drink, watch a game, eat a beautiful meal,
And have a good drink.
and have another drink.
His third question is, what keeps you going? Is it, I think that means when you're meeting red blocks, or roadblocks, not red blocks. Resilience, a focus on incremental improvement. You're just stuck with it. You don't have a choice, so you got to one step after the other. What keeps you going when you're faced with the difficulties that every entrepreneur faces in their business, particularly in a turnaround?
What did Winston Churchill say? When you're in hell, keep going.
Something to that effect. I do remember that
Right,
quote. So it was a little bit of don't have a choice. I mean,
embrace the suck. You know, listen, I've embraced the suck so many times
yeah,
in my life, but I always end up in a happy place.
right. I think that's a great one. Embrace the suck.
That's what the U.S. military comes from,
Is that what they say?
being, you know, in a challenging situation.
Yeah.
Marines embrace the suck.
I want to talk to you about some turnaround concepts that are pillars for my content and the Winning Momentum podcast. And you've already touched on at least 4 of them already, which I have found interesting. And the first one, if I had my checklist of things to do in a turnaround, and that I do in a turnaround, if I walk into a troubled company as an advisor, if I'm buying a company, the first thing for me is to define success. You can't let other people in a turnaround situation define success. You know, everybody can look at Apple and go, oh, wow, what a success, right? Mm-hmm. But what the hell does success mean for Red Steakhouse, or more specifically for Aaron Hammer as a stakeholder of Red Steakhouse? What does success for Equip Innovations, a company of mine, mean? What does success for Navani Stainless, a company of mine, mean? Because people, when you're dealing with a troubled company and you're turning it around, you're coming from a place of negativity and failure by definition. And, you know, I've had examples where I don't participate a lot in formal bankruptcies, but I have used formal bankruptcies as part of the plan to restructure this company that also needs to have its operations turned around. And then people would look at that formal bankruptcy, oh, look at Sinclair bankrupted that company, right? Not understanding that that was part of the
Trying to add
strategy
value.
all along. I always tell people one of my first companies that I bought, like in '97, I bought a mining company and the mine was closed down. That was in Ontario, but it had a wholly owned subsidiary in the U.S. and we were the second largest processor of graphite.
Was I director of that company?
No, that was a lot later that you became. Did you become a director of a company? Okay. Anyways, no, it was before I even knew you. This was back in '97. And in the Canadian operation, there was a bunch of unsecureds, obviously, suppliers from up in Northern Ontario, and they were going to get nothing. And I worked my ass off, and they got 15 cents on the dollar, formal. And I was patting myself on the back. I did a good job for these people. But you know what they think? They think you're an asshole. You didn't pay them 85 cents, and everything you did pay them was way late. And so you're just part of the problem. And so you have to learn when you're trying to turn around a business or being an entrepreneur, you have to define your own success. That's my first rule. Did you learn any of that? You mentioned define success before.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Right there, defining success, it forces you to really objectively go through the motions of, okay, what's realistic here? What can we do? And then making good decisions, using it as a framework to make good decisions.
Yep. Yeah, my turnaround plans often or always come down to no more than 5 key metrics. And if I can hit those targets, that's how I define success. And I don't tell anybody that.
If you pay your bills, that's a
well for me they're more they're more financial. I focus always on contribution margin. I need to achieve a margin of X. Fill rates. If I'm in that sort of business, am I delivering what I said I was going to deliver? Quality, safety, right? Those sorts of things. Because if you can pick those metrics to be able to, for example, if you want to have a perfect safety record, first of all, it's just a good human thing to do, right? No one gets burned or cut in the kitchen. But to accomplish that, the whole team has to work as a team. Otherwise, you're not going to accomplish that. And so it forces the whole organization to pitch in, to care about each other, to work together, and it changes the culture. And every troubled company needs to change its culture by definition, right? And so I pick metrics like that. Mm-hmm. But the point is, my metric is never, I'm going to make $5 million in EBITDA in 3 years or something along those lines. It's none of your goddamn business. And my metric is not, I'm going to pay everybody 100 cents on the dollar if the company needs to be restructured. You have to be realistic. You have to understand the game plan. It has to be simple, and then you need to go after it, and you need to not worry what other people define. And you need to, I guess where I'm heading with this is, if you haven't defined your own success, you are, what am I trying to say? You're open to negativism from the market, right? And you're going to get that 100% for sure.
Yeah.
If you associate yourself with dirt, you're going to be associated with that dirt.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. Positivity was next on my checklist. And
what were the 4 concepts again? Remind me.
That you hit, or just all of them in general?
Yeah, in general.
In general, well, it's more than 4. So define success, positivity, stop the bleeding, momentum, winning momentum. And you talked about that. Winning momentum for me is you and every one of your employees wake up in the morning and feel like today's a little bit better than yesterday when they go to work, right? And
fuck, I mean, that would be ideal.
Right?
People have just been trying to get by this whole time.
Yeah, and if you can create that momentum, the whole purpose of the reason this podcast is called the Winning Momentum Podcast is because, to me, working in turnarounds and troubled companies for 30 years, when is a turnaround over? When is a crisis over? So that's part of defining.
Once you get the award.
No, that's when the next turnaround begins. There's no definition for that. And what attracts resources, both financial and human, what attracts resources is momentum in a positive direction. People want to be associated with things. They could be shit, but as long as they're going in the right direction, people and cash want to be associated with that, right? And if it's going in a negative direction, or if it's just stuck in limbo because you don't have the permits, that's terrible.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was heartbreaking that we'd come into the restaurant and it just wasn't the way that we wanted it. New Year's Eve, our opening night, there was a wicked storm on South Beach, crazy wind, and all we had was the patio open, and we had booked it $250 ahead for New Year's Eve opening night, and the weather was so unkind, and we had no experience with the space, and it was such a disaster. We lost half the book. They canceled. We called people and told them the situation, and I ended up not having a place to sit, and neither did our mutual friend, Rafi Azadian, and his group. So we set up 2 tables in the middle of the construction zone, and we had New Year's Eve on opening night there in the middle of the construction zone while the whole world was storming. and like the team did as good as they could. Turns out we grossed like $24,000 that night, notwithstanding the challenges. And on my way out, I looked at Chef. I'm like, so how's it work? And he's like, this is going to work. I'm like, you got it? He's like, I got it. This kitchen's fine.
Excellent.
And that was what we knew, right then and there, we knew it was going to work.
Yeah. Good story. We can skip the rest of those. Let's move on to a broader topic, if that's good with you. And I want to know your view of the world. And I asked Cohen this on the last show. I'm not sure when we're airing ours, but I was in a bad mood that day. I asked him if we were doomed. Are we just doomed? We've had 2 years of a global pandemic, and I personally refuse to complain about that because I'm in such a privileged place in life, and people have had it way harder than me. But still, there's been a lot of uncertainty and stress to deal with because of that. We have terrible inflation. I don't know if you're seeing that. You must be seeing that in your business with your input costs going up. You're not sure what you can pass through on a shrimp cocktail or whatever to...
Listen, I'm looking at it from multiple angles, from the law firm, from administrative staff to paralegals to talented lawyers, legal professionals,
and the bonuses, retention, signing, raises,
blah, 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 blah. And then on the red side, we got to raise menu prices.
Yeah,
and the staff benefits from that.
Well, and if you're in downtown Miami, where you are, I don't know if downtown is the right word, but where the cruise ships are, Miami Beach, you can probably raise the prices 10, 20%. It's not that sensitive,
I mean, at some point, like, you're going to spend $100 for a little filet.
Right.
Like, come on. So that's really the challenge.
Yeah. So you don't know what you can pass through.
Chef has done a really good job of managing our food cost.
Right.
We have an Israeli team right now looking at data to try and make us more efficient, more profitable in the kitchen, focus our menu more, use pricing models, AI to help us predict consumer behavior.
Well, that's interesting. We've had commodity spikes, not relevant to your business. Your contribution margin, which is my favorite topic, suffers as a result. terrible supply chain problems, long lead times. I've had a couple of businesses shut down in the last year for several weeks for a lack of commodity. And then when you do have some commodity, now I got to start paying up front because, they want money in advance to even produce. Never mind ship. I'm sure you're seeing the same ship. You're seeing the same in certainly in the food business side. I would think you're having supply chain disruption there. Interest rates are going to be going up. So you're probably seeing that in your legal practice more than impacting your steakhouse, I would guess. In other words, through your client base, you're seeing the impact of it. Hasn't happened yet? Okay, but it is happening. It is going to happen. There's just no question about that.
We'll see.
Cost of energy is out of control, right? So you're probably burning.
Scott, there are no bankruptcies. There are.
Well, because there's lots of money.
Virtually none. On a percentage basis, it's minuscule.
Right.
The amount of money that we pumped into the global economy is insane.
Yes.
And it's going to result in price inflation for many things, maybe even the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. I think that's right. But when interest rates go up and input costs go up, there will be bankruptcies. I don't understand how you can't buy your way out of that problem.
25 years in the business, and I started at a 6.5% home mortgage, and now I'm at a 3%.
Yeah.
25 years. All it did was go down, lowering interest rates, and then it stabilized and go up a little bit.
So I think you're pushing back on this already answers my question about are we doomed as a world?
Doomed.
Or is there positivity out of this? It's just what I think that people younger than us have just never ever seen a downturn.
Well, clearly that's true. Depends on the age of the person, but that's a fair point. It's been a prosperous economy since we sort of hit reset in 2008. And look who's profited the most. I mean, Wall Street, Warren Buffett, Apple, Amazon, but they earned it.
Yes.
They earned it, no doubt.
Yeah. So you're not depressed or...
No, listen, we're not going to have a ton of bankruptcies in the immediate future. You might have increasing workout activity as, bankers start calling defaults, but the Fed has been so hands-off on their financial institutions that, you're not seeing lenders call defaults. My business partner, Rick Ryan, who represents banks, almost exclusively. And he hasn't sent a demand letter in over a year.
Really?
For a lot of the handful of banks that he represents. And there's no default activity materially, like whether there's sort of Paul Newman, Tom Cruise backyard pool games being had, maybe.
Yep.
With distressed investors with cash coming in, moving quickly.
Yep.
I've got some clients like that, some friends like that.
I see this, all of this unrest in the world. It's concerning.
Let me ask you, Scott, are we doomed?
Well, no. And for me, it's an opportunity. For you, it's an opportunity. I see every crisis as an opportunity. On the Martinis with Scott show, when COVID hit, I tried to do a number of weekly shows on how to lead through a crisis with a specific focus on understanding your limited number of priorities, and then seeking to leapfrog your competition based on those priorities. And this just seems to be a dragged out continuation from one crisis to the next. So I don't think that advice for me changes. What I'm worried about is the people that are not our age, that don't have our wisdom, who haven't been around the block, and they're freaked out, Aaron. Like, I think we need to provide some context.
More than our kids that had to wear masks for a year and a half every day, all day. Come on.
That's such a horrible. But I have a 9-year-old and she just sucked it up. But I don't know what
My kids sucked it up too, but like
the damage done to them in developmental and social. It's horrible. It's horrible. I don't see it because I live with her every day and she's great.
Yeah,
but
no, I mean, it's not. It'll affect kids
in a different way
individually. But yeah, I mean, my high schooler, she hasn't had a normal social life at all.
Yeah,
she's 16 years old.
This is also from Cohen.
Oh dear.
What do you see as we already talked about there being a bunch of money in the U.S. market still. First of all, this is for me. You don't see that availability of cash tightening up anytime soon?
No.
Okay. So if you want to go buy a company rather than being an entrepreneur, I mean, that is an entrepreneurial thing to do. But if you want to go buy a business, you want to be in mergers and acquisition, you're in trouble with your mainstream bank and you want to go to a specialty lender, all of that capital's out there in that market, right? And you could help people find that.
Of course.
Yeah. And so what is the industry-wise, what would you see as the next sector for distressed buying opportunities, for buying businesses? Do you have a thought on that?
I'd probably say prepare for the next real estate bust.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, what sector's going to fail right now? Realistically, what sector's at risk of?
Well, I think if your interest rates go up 3-4% with the leverage that you have on real estate right now, and the moving of people to different jurisdictions with virtual work, you might be dead on right about that. And I know that in the Canadian market, I probably won't express this properly, but people that have, speculatively prepaid for condo development, and then the developer, their input costs went up, 40-50% on labor, on materials.
Pre-construction in Miami Beach, $3,000 US a square foot.
Wow.
That's what you're seeing at the best new buildings that are pre-construction.
So those are they're going through a bankruptcy process now, to which, I asked the question, I already knew the answer, but, who, in a bankruptcy, when you're restructuring a business, someone has to suffer. You have to figure out.
Yeah, real estate's more like a financial restructuring.
Yeah.
More financial.
Right, but it's the individuals that put the $20,000 or $100,000 on the condo. They're the ones that are getting blown out in that situation. You
got to cut deals with all of them, or honor their contracts,
or run it through a process, and that's the end of it. That's what they're doing here, right? Mm-hmm. So all those people for 5 years that was their business, was prepaying on a condo. It gets built, then they flip it or rent it. I don't know if you're seeing that in the U.S., but that's a serious problem here.
No, I don't know about in the U.S., but it wouldn't surprise me.
All right, real estate. What else do you want to talk about?
What do you think the next sector to bottom out is?
I don't have a sector in mind. I work a lot in manufacturing. I don't think it's going to get any better. I don't think it's going to get any worse. And I know I work in every sector. It's not just that I'm in manufacturing, but I'm in manufacturing right now. And so I'm familiar with that current. I'm speaking at a white label hemp conference in May in Vegas. And that's I just got that locked in the other day. It's sort of a keynote speech there, and that industry is just in chaos, absolute chaos. But I don't see any. Maybe you're right on real estate. I don't see any specific. This industry's screwed, and these other industries are fine. I'm more worried about just general inflation and interest rates, just hurting the economy as a whole.
I think that's a reasonable concern, but there's still so much money out there.
Yeah.
Main Street always gets left behind.
Yeah.
And that's what's right. I mean, can't avoid that.
That's exactly right. I have my parting question for you. Do you have anything else you want to talk about first?
No, just that it's been great to be here. Thank you for hosting me. It's been a beautiful week. I love Fernie. We love Fernie. The hospitality you've shown Lana and I has been just extraordinary. I love your family. And I'm very glad that our paths crossed so many years ago, that I could be here in your lair, just enjoying this special moment. Thank you for your friendship.
A long time ago, and thank you. 3 shows about winning momentum, changing from negative to positive. Give our
Change
audience
momentum.
Give
one
our
is say
audience
yes.
3 tips.
Yeah, say yes, say yes, say yes. There's your 3. Lean in. Lean in. Best way to change momentum. Don't fight, necessarily against the current. You're never going to survive that. Lean in. Let the invisible hand guide you. Say yes. Say yes.
All right. How do people reach you?
BankruptcyJock.com.
BankruptcyJock.com.
Like you, I have a collection of my sort of professional pursuits, and been a lot of years practicing law.
And why should people reach you? What are you going to help them with?
Oh, that's a good question. Business planning, legal situations, legal problems, anything. If I can't do it, I'll make sure the right person at my firm gets to it and handles it. We closed 200 M&A deals last year. The firm is a juggernaut in middle market and upper middle market M&A. So there's a lot of deal activity. I can put people in the sort of stream of, the stream of the deals in that way. Call me just to have a glass of wine, to meet someone new, to meet an entrepreneur. I do say yes, and I'll meet you at Red for a cocktail.
What an offer. What an offer. BankruptcyJock.com, correct?
Correct.
All right. This has been the Winning Momentum podcast with my guest, Aaron Hammer. Please check out our shows, my content on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's where I am. You can also go to the new website, thescottsinclair.com, TheScottSinclair. All the content will be there. Hit subscribe somewhere. It would help a lot. Aaron, love you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Scott.